Yeah. You're listening to Autodesk's Digital Builder Podcast, a show that inspires construction professionals to innovate and use technology to improve how they build our world. I'm Eric Thomas, and I've been working in construction for nearly a decade. And now I have the privilege to sit down with industry trailblazers to hear how they're solving construction's biggest challenges and redefining the future of the built environment. Welcome back to Autodesk's Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today, we are coming back once again to take a close look at all of the biggest trends across the construction industry. I know I'm excited. I've been excited all week. So thank you so much for joining us. If you are a first-time listener of the show or first-time watcher, please throw a comment in the chat. I'd love to know where you're hailing from and what got you excited today. If you're a long-time listener, and I really hope you are, make sure you toss that in and let us know how long you've been hanging around with us as well. I'm very grateful for everybody who's hanging out with us today. But enough from me. I think it's time we should introduce our guests. If you're with us last year, these should be no surprises. I'm joined by Ariel Castillo, the Innovation Director at Miller Davis Company, and Brad Buckles, the Vice President of Technology and Innovation at CPPI. And gents, normally I ask how you're doing today, but I know you're doing good because we're here doing some cool stuff. So I'm going to skip that and I'm just going to make an assumption. And I want to just talk a little bit about the importance of industry trends and why the heck we're actually having this conversation. And on one side of the fence, you could say, we're here chasing trends. We're all really excited. And I call it shiny new toy syndrome. And sometimes that's a little bit dangerous because it can feel a little bit overwhelming. But I think paying attention to trends is important because it helps us keep a pulse on what's happening in the construction industry, especially with such narrow margins, so much risk, and so many surprises as our projects move forward. I think understanding what's coming in the year, whether it's technology or processes or delivery methods, is incredibly important. So I'm going to stop talking now. Brad, I'd love to hear, why do you care about trends and why are you hanging out with me today?
Well, thank you, Eric, for having me. I'll tell you, it's just a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited about our conversations today. It's important that we're impacting our construction projects on the boots, boots on the ground at the project level. And to do that, we have to make sure that we're seeing these trends, that we're understanding innovation opportunities that are out there, and that we're selecting the right tools for the job so that they can be force multipliers to help our people deliver the project on time and on schedule and on budget.
I love that. And the force multiplier point is huge because how can I hate the do more with less. I think that feels icky to me because it's asking too much of people, I think. But the real reality is how do we work with the things we have available to us a whole lot more effectively and impactfully? And I think that's where tools and technology really come in. Ariel, how about you? Why are you fired about trends, and why have you decided to come hang out with us again this year?
Happy to be back. And, I always think that it's important to have this conversation about trends, not only to understand the industry, but as a way to benchmark ourselves as a company, right? So it's always good, just like when you kick off, the new year and you're coming up with all these resolutions, same thing. Try to make sure you identify where you are as a company. What is the competition doing? What's available to you in the market? And what can you do to grow as a company? So that's why trends are important. Also, to make sure, there's a match, kind of like swiping left or right, what you're looking for this year.
I love that as well. So let's jump into our first rapid fire round. And those of you who hung out with us last year, remember, I'm going to list a bunch of different industry trends that I think might be, compelling this year. And I'm going to ask Brad and Ariel to respond if they think it is hype or if they think it's real. And I'll start with Brad first, and then the second half of these, I'm going to have Ariel answer first. And I think the biggest elephant in the room today is artificial intelligence, but not just AI more broadly, because there's so many facets of this. And I'm not talking about the creepy chat crawlers that are responding to me on LinkedIn. They aren't real people. Brad, I appreciated your response to my post the other day, using ChatGPT to call me out on calling out the AI tool. So thank you for that. But let's jump into our construction focus. Brad, AI for contract management, hype or real?
Oh, yeah, it's real.
Ariel, how about you?
Real.
AI for safety and compliance?
Yeah, it's real. It's opportunity.
I think we're still in the hype phase.
All right. So we'll have to come back to that one. AI for project finance.
Real.
Hype for me.
I like this. All right. AI for pre-con and estimating.
Real.
Hype for me.
All right. How about AI for managing spec books?
Definitely real.
Real.
All right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to say that one's real as well. I'll jump in there. AI for design renderings.
Real.
100% real.
All right. Let's step away from AI for a second. How about drones and robotics, especially in contrast to last year when we were talking?
Yeah, for sure real.
I would say drones real, robots hype.
All right. Depends on the robot, I think, too, and what you're trying to use, but we'll get into that one too. Automation
Yeah,
of
correct.
workflows and systems integrations.
Real.
Real as well.
All right, Ariel, I'm going to have you go first for these last handful. How about adopting common data environments?
Real.
Real.
Augmented reality and virtual reality?
Real.
Real.
All right, how about prefab and modular construction?
It's still hype.
Yeah, I would say it's real.
I'm going to lean towards real on that one as well, but we'll have to come back. I love the fact that we have some disagreements here. Generative design and construction.
I'm still gonna go with hype on that one.
All right.
High fish, but real opportunities.
Trending towards real. All right. How about using digital twins appearing on more projects?
I mean, the word is real. The practical use, still debatable.
Yeah, I would agree with Ariel on that.
I think it's really how you set your project up and the folks and how invested they are too, because it's like if you slap that on top after the fact, it's a whole lot harder to have that be real when you go, oh, we want a digital twin too, and everybody has a panic attack. All right, I got one more. A new and robust emphasis on workforce development and retention.
Oh, real.
Yeah, definitely real.
Yeah, I think that was an easy answer for everybody here. Absolutely real from my perspective as well. So, Brad, I'd like to come back to you for a second. Out of all these trends, which did you have the strongest reactions to, regardless of if they were hype or real in your perspective?
You know, safety, I think, is something that I believe is very important. And I think there's opportunities, kind of to Ariel's point, it kind of falls in the high-pitched realm, but there are some real world use cases out there, some things that we've used at CPPI, like, cameras spotting, construction workers out there without the proper PPE. I think there's opportunities to where, there can be some, identifying things within the construction project, especially when you go out on a project and you're, doing a renovation and things such as that, where it's identifying your construction project. I mean, even in Autodesk Construction Cloud and Build, you have the ability to take photos and auto tag those photos. So I think, take safety and you couple that on there. And I think there's some really good opportunities there, but I think it's an emerging technology, very exciting. But I'm excited to see where that goes, Eric. And I believe in 2025, we're going to see that take off a little bit more than what we've seen, in the past. And then, not keep adding on, but analytics, something that Autodesk has done for quite some time is taking and looking at issues and looking at data within their common data environment and surfacing those things in a meaningful way in the insights tool. Continuing to do that, continuing to leverage the generative AI to be able to spot safety opportunities out in the field. I think there's some emerging technology that we're going to see come to fruition more in 2025.
I appreciate that, and there's so much coming at us right now. Sometimes it's hard to make a choice on which of these tools are really the ones we want to go head first into and start adopting. And sometimes, maybe we want to push the pause button and decide, a little bit later if that tool wants to roll into our facilities as well.
You're so right, Eric. There's such a change fatigue. We've got to be careful in 2025 because we're seeing a lot of technology, a lot of shiny objects, as we mentioned in 2024, certainly seeing those again in 2025. And those shiny tools are really neat, and there's some really productive opportunities out there. But we've got to be careful because at the end of the day, we're pushing technology out to, our companies, and they're having to adopt this technology. So we've got to be really choosy on what we decide to implement within our organization.
Yeah, I think it's a year of intentionality, as I often say on Digital Builder. I joke that I should have a swear jar whenever I say that, but it's an important nuance to remember when we look at all of the technology and choices we have in front of us. Ariel, which of these got your attention the most, whether they were hype or real?
Most of them, and I mentioned hype, related to AI. I think there's a great opportunity there, but the reason I said hype, especially with, let's say, safety, project finance, it has to do with the fact that we still are structuring the data so that it becomes useful. I think that, a good example with safety is we have heard about using AI and its visual capabilities in order to immediately create an issue or tag when, let's say, somebody's not using a PPE or there's somebody walking really close to an equipment. That sounds great, but how many job sites have a camera? Right? So that's a good question to ask. Like, do I have the systems, the hardware, or the data available so that the AI systems can actually help me? And that's why sometimes I tag them in the hype area, because again, they are being developed and there's a really good opportunity, but I don't see us, jumping into like a big spectrum of the industry, including small and medium-sized companies, saying, "Hey, I'm using AI for safety through cameras." So that's the only reason that I said hype on those. But I think great opportunities out there. I just don't see them super tangible in 2025.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is kind of an augmentation conversation. Like, obviously, we're not doing away with our safety managers, and that would be outrageous to even consider. But we're able to give them more information to make choices than they had previously. And these tools that we're looking at are able to parse and process a whole lot of information at a scale that a person simply can't do. But Ariel, you're absolutely right. You have to set yourself up for success. And so if you don't have the right foundation, for lack of a better pun, to build into all of these more modern technologies, it's not necessarily going to provide the ROI that you're going to be requiring. And so I think we need to be really intentional and thoughtful before we start jumping into shiny new toy syndrome, as I joked earlier, because there's a lot that goes into it, and you only get to make a first impression when you roll out new technologies for your team one time, and that second impression is a lot harder to get a positive response by if you made somebody feel upset about something you've rolled out. But I want to get a little bit further into AI and look retrospectively first, because of course we have the benefit of looking backwards, because we joined everybody here last year just around this time. And so, Ariel, could you just tell me some more of your thoughts about how the adoption of AI evolved both across the industry and at your company last year, and how that aligned with what we were expecting at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, man, that's a great question, especially because last year we were exposed to so much AI everything, right? And I think that back then, I will tag AI as hype, but that doesn't mean that there's steps that we need to take as a company to get where this becomes actually useful. And last year was a good year to analyze the market, understand what's becoming available, and then start doing training sessions, getting the staff ready to understand what is AI, how does it work, what are the things that you can do, what are the things that you can't do, and eventually develop what can be considered an AI acceptable use policy for a company. That doesn't mean that we are immediately going to jump into AI, but at least you're getting your staff ready so that when they are using certain tools, they understand what's possible and what's not possible. And one of the things that we've done is we have met with different companies where they have they're providing this different AI tools, Autodesk being one of them, and we have hosted what we call these grilling sessions. Grilling sessions are pretty much when we get our operations staff or superintendents, whoever wants to join, or it makes sense to basically sit down in front of the technology, start asking questions. Because again, when you've been exposed to AI for a little bit longer than others, you get pretty good at what kind of prompts you put into the AI, right? But you never know what a superintendent is going to come up with, or an intern, right? So you want to have them in the same room and start grilling the AI, asking all these questions to try to understand, first of all, what do you need and what kind of answers are you getting? Are the answers accurate? Am I getting the AI to just spit something that doesn't make any sense, right? And if it doesn't, it's fine. I mean, we just need to talk to the developer and communicate, give that feedback. Because again, we believe in the technology. We just need to make sure that it's ready for our staff to use.
I like that you made a point, I think, of just really building that foundation again for whatever comes next. And so it's a lot of listening. It's a lot of let's go out and break the dang thing, which I think is important in the early stages of whatever tool you're rolling out. So I appreciate that perspective. Brad, any thoughts from your seat on either the development of AI internally at your company or just more broadly in the past year as we still kind of look back before we jump into what's coming?
Yeah, I remember when you asked the question about AI last year, we said it was hypish, but definitely real. There has been, as Ariel said, an explosion of AI ad hoc point solutions that are out there. At CPPI, we kind of taken a cautionary approach to implementing AI. We want to make sure that we're protecting our intellectual property. There's a lot of point solutions that are kind of surfacing up from, countries that we probably wouldn't want to be able to, share our data with. I think there are, these kind of point solutions don't really connect into the broader picture of what we're trying to do. So we've kind of put some governance around how we implement AI at CPPI. And we try to lean towards, trusted partners like Autodesk. And I could list a few others. Ignite is a great company that's really championing AI in that space. And so we're leaning into the technology that our trusted partners are doing, not to say that we're scared to implement other different solutions out there. We have a few other ad hoc, I'll call point solutions that are providing some real value and they're trusted. We've vetted them, things such as that. But, that's kind of been our approach, Eric.
It really does make sense. And if you really want a full primer on AI, if you're out there, listening or watching right now, look back to my episode with May Winfield, where we talk about a lot of the legal risks of using AI in construction. Short version, don't plug all of your information, especially if it's confidential, into ChatGPT, because it is in ChatGPT forever and it could show up anywhere. And so you have to be really intentional about how you adopt all of these different tools and just, think about how your team might use it, as Ariel really thoughtfully pointed out, because we can make a lot of assumptions, but until you step back and actually go, okay, well, this is what they do, or this is what they want to do and how they're doing it, it's hard to really make a choice in what you're telling them to consider moving forward. So huge foundation to build in the last year. I think we're all on the same page there. Brad, can you expand on this now? What do you think is coming in 2025 in regards to the AI landscape, both, at CPPI or, more broadly?
I'm starting to see, again, kind of going back to our trusted partners. I know some of the work that Autodesk is working on. I know some of the work that some of the other tools that we're using, things that they're doing. And it is very exciting stuff that is really going to be meaningful, not only to our project teams, but also kind of that administrative side, marketing, business development, to accounting, things that they can really help out in those areas. So, again, am I afraid of ChatGPT? Absolutely not. That wouldn't be the message that I would put out there today, nor am I afraid of Copilot. But I think, as you mentioned, Eric, there needs to be some caution when you start, choosing what data you're going to plug in there and really understanding what those tools do and what the purpose of them. So, I think that's going to be I know that's going to be our approach in 2025. And I think we're going to start seeing that as a trend where people have okay, we hear the noise, we've seen the explosion. Now we're going to assess the landscape.
Yeah, I think every dang tool that's coming out right now has the little asterisk. It goes with AI, and that can feel quite overwhelming. And a lot of the time, it's just hand waving and not anything that really, actually offers value to the organizations. And so, I think everything you're saying right now is very smart in how we evaluate these tools and make sure that our teams are set up to be successful and how we expect them to. Ariel, how does that compare to what your team has in mind for the coming year with the AI development?
Very similar to Brad, I believe that the expectation is that users are going to be more comfortable using the tool, understand again what they're capable of and what they're not capable of. And then also the same thing for companies, where they are more, again, same thing, more comfortable into basically saying we can use AI for this specific uses, and we'll be waiting on for this developments later on.
All right, so let's step away from focusing directly on AI. I think it would have been remiss of us not to talk about it because it's such a common topic. But Ariel, I'm interested to hear more about the trending world of what's happening in pre-construction. Could you tell me more about what parts of pre-con your teams are planning to improve, either with technology or process improvements this year? Like, what's top of mind in this realm?
Yeah, pre-construction is, I think, especially for our case, we are a construction manager and a GC. So we mostly focus on saying when we talk about pre-construction, it would be more like related to estimating and also bonds and so on. So the idea here is that, the pre-construction world as a whole has been very disjointed. Typically, you you get the data in one spot, but then you do a takeoff in another platform, and then you use another platform for estimating, and the same thing for bid procurement and so on. And what I've seen is that multiple companies, they are trying to bridge that gap and make sure that there's a better connection between the different systems, which helps a lot because it takes time when you have to upload documents into one platform, and then you got to take the documents and upload it somewhere else so that you can do the takeoff. Then that information you have to export it and import it into another platform, right? So I believe that we're gonna go into, at least this year, because you have heard a lot about mergers and acquisitions in the past couple of years. I think by this year you're gonna see substantial changes when it comes to the solutions out there for pre-con.
It makes a bunch of sense. I mean, the formal proposal manager inside of me that I talk about fairly often is excited to hear that this is the trend that we're seeing right now, because I remember bid day, and bid day was stressful. It was always very stressful.
It's still stressful.
And it always will be to some degree. But I think we're at it's a real great opportunity to add more certainty and reduce that stress, especially when we're pulling away from some of this manual management. I can just look back to, I get a spreadsheet from the estimation team, and if it's an online submission, it's due in 22 minutes. And now I have to export this to PDF, and I've got to merge it into a document and resave the thing and put it in the portal and all of these things. And I'm there like going crazy. $200 million bid is due now in 7 minutes. And I've assembled this package, put it up into the ether. And I know I'm only focusing on the tail end of that. But even if we can streamline that, much less all of the steps that get to that point, it's going to be a huge win for everybody. And I think we'll have probably a lot more retention for proposal managers who will feel slightly less fatigued when, that deadline ticker starts rolling down on the dashboard they're looking at. Brad, how's that shaping up in your world? Where are you guys focusing on pre-con right now?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Ariel did such a really good job kind of explaining the cornucopia of tools that are used out in pre-construction. And automation has got to be the focus for CPPI in 2025. Trying to, as Ariel said, kind of stole my thunder, to tie some of these tools together so that we can have more of a streamlined approach for workflow. At CPPI, our pre-construction team is really, really process oriented, and those guys have really understand A to Z in the pre-construction phase. But what we need to do as technologists is come alongside them and determine how can we make this streamlined approach flow a little bit easier. And to your point, Eric, tie everything up in a nice neat bow that can be built, the deliverable, to our potential clients.
Yeah, there's so much work and so much manual work in all of pre-construction and estimating and proposal management right now. And I think if we can eliminate even just a little bit of that, that's margin. That's another proposal you could be chasing. That's, somebody gets to go home at 5 instead of 7 because they're, not doing so much manual work in the bid. So I love this direction. I think it's a reason to be optimistic. Brad, I'd like to follow on to that and talk a little bit more about the change fatigue that you mentioned earlier. And I think this is a really important nuance. And I joked about it lightly in the sense of, shiny new toy syndrome, like there's so many things going, but that also, let me be honest, feels a little dismissive. And that's not intentional, of the challenge of being on the receiving end of a great deal of technology and change, and being the receiver of change management. And so tell me why is this so top of mind for you and your peers, and how can we do better in the coming years to manage this fatigue feeling that people have?
Well, it's not just the shiny toys that are, continuing to grow. It's the applications that we currently have, that there's enhancements coming out. There's new modules being implemented, and that is great. That is what we want to happen. But in the end of the day, if we're not providing the resources and the training and supporting the people that are consuming the software, that are actually using it day to day, it's gonna, I mean, it's for nothing. All of our work is for nothing. All of the new shiny toys are for nothing. We've got to make sure we're creating impact where the construction process is, and that's out in the field. And but with that, yes, people do get tired of change. And but when they start seeing the value, the why behind the decisions that we're making, then they're all on board. And so it's my job to make sure that we're delivering a value proposition. It's my job to make sure that we're providing the training and the resources to our people so that we can minimize that change fatigue and actually start producing value again out in the field.
I have so many thoughts, but I'm going to save them because I'm over here nodding furiously because I agree with everything you're saying. Ariel, how does that shape up on your team? And do you have any additional thoughts before I hype both of you up, because I'm very much on in the same page here.
Eric, there's so many ways that we can answer your question. So many perspectives. I think that we usually have a very, and I say we, talking about Brad and other folks that are always pushing for change. We have such a biased perspective because we know all the things that we can improve. We know all the potential that's out there to improve different processes, and we are excited about change, right? But if you go into the other side of the coin, right, like you were saying, Eric, the people that actually have to do the change, that they deal on a daily basis with the change in the process. It is hard. It's hard because you're sometimes depending on the age that they have, you might be challenging their identity on the way, somebody that has been doing the same process for 20, 25 years. Not saying that is wrong, right? They might feel that you don't necessarily know what you're talking about, right? Because you're just pushing more. So it gets really exhausting where you're not only pushing one change, but you're now pushing multiple changes. So a simple one is if you are asking your project management staff to use a new and going from paper-based project management into a digital common data environment, right? That's a big change. Now all of a sudden everything, RFI submittals, all the communication is managed digitally, and they're not necessarily used to that. So you are pushing so much at once that change fatigue is definitely real. And it happens now with not only the field staff and the project managers. Think about that. The goal and what we're shooting for is making sure that the industry as a whole is integrated. So now it also includes our people in marketing, in accounting. You have owners, you have the subcontractors, everything that's flowing upstream and downstream. So just be mindful that yes, we want the industry to change, but also you need to be successful at it, and pushing too much at once, it's actually something that can hurt you. To keep in mind with the fatigue is the rate of change, how much you're changing at once. That's probably going to be the key for you to track.
I'm right there with you both. I think I have tremendous empathy for anybody who is a bit overwhelmed by the amount of change that's being introduced into their job, whether it's additional digitization or a top-down decision to change the tool that you're using, because that's stressful. And when we're expected to continue delivering on our projects and continue our margin, as expected, having to think about these additional steps outside of your regular workflow, it's easy to get mad in response to this. And I think we get to manage this by really listening and communicating, as Brad is pointing out earlier, and being incredibly thoughtful in how we communicate and help those folks understand. And when the light bulb turns on, that's a wonderful moment, because now you've got another advocate to begin with. But two, it shows that the way that you've communicated with them really met them where they are. And I think we all know, like, a construction company isn't a democracy in the sense that you're out there getting every single vote from the field to help you make the decision ultimately on the tool that you get, because you still have to make those decisions from the executive level. But if you do listen and you do gather that information and you understand the perspective of everybody out there, the messaging that you're going to be offered to help deliver that change hopefully is going to resonate in a way that makes them feel heard already, and also really truly understand why the heck you're trying to make them do something differently, even if it adds 5 minutes to the task that it might not have previously, because they know why. And understanding why makes everybody feel so much better. And when you get the grumpiness and the grumbling from everybody in that change point, that's hard to reel back too, because that spreads. And so I think it's our due diligence to avoid that and prevent it by being incredibly thoughtful change managers, because this isn't easy. And I'm not up here saying that it is, but we can be intentional. And I think that does make it a little bit easier. So let's look at automation for a few minutes. I know we've mentioned this previously, and Ariel, I'm going to kick this one first. Can you share some more of your thoughts about how aggressively companies might be looking at automation and really streamlining the workflows in the coming years? I feel like we've grabbed all the tools now in the last couple of years. We're really driving down this digital journey, and I think digital transformation, even though it's a buzzword, it really isn't. But like, now is the moment for us to optimize what we have. So tell me about how that looks like at Miller Davis, and where do you think the industry's headed?
Yeah, so it's I think that the key there is always go and meet with your staff and try to ask them what is something that they do on a daily basis that they feel it is mundane task or repetitive tasks, right? That can give you an idea, because again, if you are working, let's say, from the IT side or innovation, you're not necessarily in the nitty-gritty day-to-day activities, so it's good for you to understand what they're struggling with, right? And then you're going to run into things that you probably have never thought about. Like, when we create a project, we need to create it in the project management system, but we also need to create it in the accounting system, and we might have to create it somewhere else, like our CRM or anything else. Okay, so how about integrating and exploring ways where you only have to do that job once, right? And that's going to create a lot of questions out there too, like who needs to create it first, and how do we want to push the information over? And we're just going through that right now. We're working on integrating HCC cost management with Sage, and that has been one of the conversations out there. Is basically who's the starting point when it comes to creating a project? What if it needs to be created before there's even dollars associated with it? There's a lot of questions that come out, and there's so many solutions that we can probably get. You can think about like Workato or anything like If This Then That, simple things that can again make your job a little bit easier, because you don't have to do something multiple times. And also the benefit is that you are making sure that they're not making mistakes on different ends, right? So I think it's just very nice understanding again what people need to automate, and then look for those solutions to see what makes sense and create the right workflow.
Makes sense. Brad, how do you feel about that, the automation conversation we're having here?
Yeah, automation is something that's just near and dear to my heart. I'll tell you, I like the idea, as Ariel said, touch data one time. If you've heard me any time before, that's definitely my passion. And so I look at it like this. We're stacking up all of these dominoes in various different places, but if we align them up, we can tip one, and the rest of them will fall. And that's kind of how my mind works when it comes to technology and integrating and setting up automations. Ariel touched on this just a little while ago, where if we're setting up a project, CPPI, we're currently working on a web front end for all of these various different tools, from CRM to our estimating software to our accounting software, and obviously to our project management software, so that we can start lining up those dominoes and tipping the first one over so that the rest fall, so that we don't have to create those projects in all of these various different tools and assign users to all these tools and kick off training to all of these users, all at a manual basis. We're able to do that one time and then watch the dominoes fall. And that's kind of CPPI's approach historically, and that's certainly going to be our focus. We talked about preconstruction earlier. So in alignment with that, that's kind of our approach moving forward in 2025 as well.
I love what both of you are saying here. I mean, Ariel, you're really bullish on understanding and listening to what causes that frustration, where those pain points really are, because as an executive, it's easier as you move up the ladder and get further removed from that day-to-day work to not necessarily understand where those pain points are too. And Brad, if I was still working at a GC, you would be my best friend, because the least amount of times that I can touch a piece of data and have to manage that, the happier I'm going to be. And just speaking very candidly, as somebody with ADHD, the mundane and the dry and the unexciting tasks in my day to day, especially if I have to do them 9 times or manage them manually 9 or 10 different times, I'm struggling. And so if you can automate that for me, I'm happy, but that helps everybody else out too. And so I think it's really impactful to figure out how we can make that day to day go more smoothly and also waste less time, because we only have a finite amount of time every single day. And I really truly want everybody to get to go home at 5. And obviously that's not always the truth in the construction industry. It's just the reality of the challenges that we manage. But I think tools like, leaning into automation and other technologies are the way to offer that to your teams in a far more equitable way. Well, I want to get back to technology hype here for a second. I think we've done a really great job about looking closely at the reality of what's coming in the year and some of the challenges. And I appreciate that too, because it's very easy to roll in and go, we're excited. We are the technology people. We want all this change, as Ariel pointed out earlier. But we also have to make sure to temper that in a way that really brings meaningful change and keeps things, within the realm of plausibility every year. But with that said, I want to look beyond 2025 and just hear, what are you really fired up about? Whether you're really hopeful because it's still in hype land, or you think it's real but people aren't paying attention to it, or any blend of the two. So, Brad, what trend or tool or technology 5, 10, 15 years do you hope is just ever present in all of our projects and all the work that we're doing?
Oh, it hands down, it's robotics, right? I mean, we love the idea that one day in the future we're going to have robots do things that either A, we don't want to do, B, that are too dangerous to do, and then the list kind of goes on from there. I think one of the challenges we're currently running into right now with these robots is battery power and battery consumption, and how long can you keep these things going, and it depends on the type of workload you put into it. I mean, is it 1 hour or is it 4 hours, or can you make them do the job all day? And I think that's going to be the challenge for these robotic engineers to overcome. If we're truly going to have a human out there laying block one day, and helping resolve some of our labor crisis that's going on, work side by side with our construction workers. Because listen, the reality is, we love talking about AI, we love talking about robotics, but we all need a job. So we need to be able to figure out that balance between working with AI, working with technology, working with robotics, and then also working, right? So there's got to be that balance. And I think that's a future problem to solve, something that we need to continue to keep in mind today, but I don't foresee that happening. Certainly not in 2025. And who knows? I'm not a futurist, so I can't determine what's going to happen. The past about 3 or 4 years, I think, accurately. So, but that's one of the things, Eric. I just get fired up thinking about and reading what's going on out there.
And I think we're on our way. I mean, the progress of battery technology alone in the last 5 years has been absolutely incredible. I just think about, carrying a bunch of lead acid batteries around way back in the day. And now we're full in on lithium ion, and the amount of times you can use new batteries now with, I think it's LiFePO4 or something. I'm saying it wrong, I'm sure. But there's a more modern edge to Li-ion batteries that are just fantastic. And so I think we're on the cusp, and, they're not taking our jobs. I feel like people have misattributed that at times in the last 5 or so years. We're augmenting how we're doing things. Do we really want to go into confined spaces? I mean, maybe some people do, but I certainly don't. And it's a way we can reduce the risk and improve safety on site, along with doing more with an ever growing challenge in managing our labor force. So I'm bullish about robotics as well, Brad. I love that answer. Ariel, how about you? What's one tool or technology that you hope shows up in the next 5 or 10 years, even if it's fully in hype land right now?
Great mind thinks alike. So I'm just gonna say what Brett mentioned. Robotics. I think it's the key there. Workforce. That's not gonna get better anytime soon. The reality is that if we can have a robot, let's say 15 years down the road, or maybe closer, hopefully, where they can work on a job site 24 hours. I mean, that's a big difference. Like we are gonna address the issues when it comes to schedules and also the cost as well. So I think that's pretty interesting. The other one that I'm going to touch on, just to not keep it on the hardware, is that I believe that with time, companies are getting better at managing their data, and because we're jumping into common data environments, everything's more structured. I would love to see it when we meet with an owner, and basically if they want to get an estimate for a job, it's pretty much coming up with 5 prompts, pretty much, and all of a sudden they can at least have an idea of how much something's going to cost based on our historical data, and instead of like taking notes and then saying, hey, we're going to meet in a couple more days, so we go back to the office and start exploring different options. I think that that's possible, but again, we need to feed in so much data into the system so that it makes sense, and then AI has to continue evolving for that.
I love both of those answers. I think I'm hopeful for all of this as well. I think we can do more with our data. And I agree, Ariel, we're also better as an industry about managing our data as well. I took this from Nathan Wood years ago, talking about the data lake versus the data sewer. And the data sewer, obviously, you don't want to be there. Like, you're gathering data, but you don't know why. You might not be gathering good data. And that's going to negatively impact all of these tools that we're talking about, because you don't have good, clean data to build these insights and this process and the movement. All of these tools move forward. And if you have this nice, delightful data lake, well, jump in, we'll have a swim. It'll be great. All right. So if you're in the chat, I see some questions rolling in. Please keep throwing those in. One of my colleagues is aggregating those, and we'll answer a couple of them here in just a couple of minutes. I do have a few questions from our big room community that I did want to ask. And the first one is from George Brizuela. George, I can barely pronounce my own name, so if I said that wrong, I'm very sorry. But he's a senior design technologist from British Columbia. And he wants to know, how are sustainability initiatives like carbon neutral construction methods evolving in 2025? And what steps can companies take to implement them without inflating project costs? That's a big question. Brad, Ariel, either you want to take it first. Basically, we're going carbon neutral. How do we make that without costing a whole lot more money?
Well, I can tell you that Autodesk is taking a big step in that direction. Eric, you'll have to help me out because I don't work on that side of the fence. But I know that there is a big effort in sustainability within Autodesk and the tools that they're producing. And the chatter that's out there is there's going to be continued development, continued effort in ensuring that we're designing sustainable products moving forward in the future. So yeah, I would say that's going to be paramount for both the construction side and the design side in 2025 and beyond, for sure.
And George, I have tremendous empathy here too, because I think sometimes implementing these initiatives, they might still come with an increase in project cost. But that's a bigger owner conversation than just how much does my building cost? And I think it's kind of the due diligence of the general contractor to really dig into that conversation with whoever is requesting these, building improvements, or if you're offering them, because this is also a total life cycle cost of the facility conversation, and not just bid time in building the actual facility. I think most of us know that the greater cost of owning and managing a building actually happens after construction is completed and continuing to maintain that facility. And so if you can reduce those costs, whether it's reducing your heating costs or reducing the amount of carbon that you're emitting or any number of factors, I'm not an expert, I'll be honest, I think that also offsets, as long as you don't have that owner that just goes, I want the lowest price and I want it now. There's a lot of nuance to unpack here. And so it's not an easy conversation, especially with the challenges in supply chain and material shortages and everything else folks are dealing with. But it's an impactful one. And even if you have a little bit of dollar cost increase, I think there is a tremendous ROI for both the environment and owning and managing that business in the long run.
And Eric, if I may tack on to what you're saying there, I think generative AI is working in that area, moving along and ensuring that we have better sustainability practices and better sustainability methods. Autodesk, like I say, I've been tapped into kind of a little bit of what they're doing in that area. And I know they're continuing to grow it from all the feedback that I get out.
I agree with you entirely there, Brad. Ariel, any thoughts there, or did Brad and I steal your answer?
No, I just want to add that the key there to me will be awareness. And one of the ways to do that is by having these, by incorporating these features into the tools that we use on a daily basis, right? Once you have to step out of that workflow and then you have to go to an external carbon calculator, that kind of like disrupts the process, because some people might not even know what is their carbon footprint, right? But if you're able to model a building and you can easily pull that information and see what's the carbon footprint for a particular building, then again, you are aware of what's happening. It's kind of like when you go now and you buy a flight, you can see immediately in Google Flights, like what's the carbon footprint for that particular flight. So if you're interested in that, you can buy one that's has less carbon footprint. So I think that just putting it out there and making it easy to, it's accessible, easy to see, then that's definitely going to help that.
You actually make a really great point too. We had a recent episode that featured the sustainability director from Webcore, where they talked about their own company's carbon initiatives and just getting that number you're talking about, Ariel, and understanding what they need to improve and how they can do better, in which areas they can implement change. And I think anything when you're attempting something brand new, whether you're on the building side and offering it to an owner or looking internally at your own organization, pick the area that has the biggest opportunity to, one, be successful and bring the biggest change in that moment, and then you iterate that as well. If you tried to make everything more streamlined and emit less carbon and all these other things all at the same time, one, you're more likely to fail because it's going to feel overwhelming. And two, you're not really setting a goal, I think, that's sustainable for your first step. So I think be just really intentional and iterative. And this applies to any technology deployment, in my perspective. Make sure you're enacting change in the areas that make the most sense to start and are going to have the most impact and likelihood for success. Because especially if you have a lot of skeptics at your company, you have this project to look back on and go, hey, look, that worked really well. How about this one? So you get to build on that too. Everybody out there in the chat, if you got more questions, please throw them my way. I'm going to pull a couple of these out here and keep them coming. We've got about 12 minutes left in our hour here, so more time to answer questions. But next one up in front of me is, how can small contractors leverage AI in contrast to some of these bigger organizations? And Ariel, I'd love your thoughts on this as well, because I think that conversation might differ a little bit if you are a ENR top 5 general contractor versus an ENR top 200, and it's important to really differentiate the nuance in that technology adoption.
Yeah, that's a great question, especially in our case, because we are a small, medium-sized construction manager. So our approach is very different. I like to say we don't have the money to develop a system, but we are capable of exploring what's out there and just double checking if it meets our needs. And I think that the best way to go out there and leverage AI is try to, again, understand what is your struggle, what is the problem, and if there's a tool out there, because there's probably something that you can use, and start playing with it. Check if it makes sense, and go through a grilling session, like I said earlier, like double check if the system can actually get you the information that you need. And again, this will be probably a very affordable subscription versus going in and developing from scratch an AI solution.
I appreciate that point a lot too, because I've seen some folks do have the resources to develop and create a new tool internally, and sometimes that makes sense. The market doesn't offer what your particular company needs, in whether it's a workflow alignment or a new net tool that fits your specific process. But I always advise folks to be cautious about that approach too when you do build and use internal dev tools to create something that might not exist or not exactly in the form that you want, because there's always a chance that a tool you already use or one that's going to come out will release that entire thing you spent a year developing is a feature that doesn't cost any more money than what you're already paying. And so there's a risk balance there in, organizations like Autodesk who have hundreds of people who are working together to build these tools. And I'm not saying this from the, big brother perspective of the software company is always right, but I think it's just a managing your resources in a way where it makes the most sense and reduces the amount of potential risk, because you also have to maintain that to continue to evolve with the other tools you use. And that continues to take resources too. So Ariel, I really like your point there. Brad, any thoughts on that small business adopting AI or other tech tools?
Well, Ariel just about said it all. One of the things I want to just touch on is make sure that you're looking at problems that you're wanting to solve. Right. Sometimes I feel like with the AI explosion and the all of the various tools that have come about through there, it almost feels like a kid at Disney World. Where are we going to go? Which route are we going to go on it? How are we going to get there? And with no real plan. So I think that companies need to look, and Ariel kind of touched on one of the practices that he has, a grilling session where he brings people in, and that's kind of the approach that TPPI has as well, where we want to hear, what are some of the pain points that you're wanting to solve? Don't just give me the great shiny tool out there. What problem are we going to actually solve with that? And I think, the smaller general contractors out there should be, very specific on the problems that they're going to be solving. And as Ariel and Eric both mentioned, start leaning into the trusted partners that you already work with, and making sure that your voice is out there helping shape the products, and being in contact with them and saying, "Hey, here's a pinch point that we're trying to solve. How can AI help in that area?"
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes with any challenge in the tools that you're using. Most of these companies do actually want your feedback, and it is heard and listened to, and oftentimes will make its way into the features. And so, build that relationship with whatever company you're working with and whatever tool it might be, because it does pay dividends. And like, I have to chuckle. I can think of, especially when, venture capital was cheap and there were way more startups kind of popping up, regardless of what industry you were in. A lot would show up to solve a problem that nobody actually had. And you want to make sure that the tools that you're rolling out and the features and technologies you're considering are solving problems for your company and the people that you're working with, as Brad just pointed out. And so, both from technology providers and the people using them, make sure whatever you do develop or choose to purchase does fill a gap, instead of deciding your team has a gap that they might not actually have, or doesn't fill the gap in a way that offers something productive for them to do their job more impactfully or better. All right, I got another one here in front of me. A little bit of a broad question, but I love both of your perspective on this. Do you envision change occurring within the use of BIM or building information models and workflows in the construction industry, either in 2025 or beyond? Ariel, you're smiling, so I'm going to throw this one your way first. Give me your thoughts on BIM and where we're headed in the next couple of years. I have some thoughts, but I'm going to be quiet for a minute.
Well, I come from the BIM world, so I love everything related to BIM. I love these conversations. And one of the comments that I mentioned that I knew was going to be controversial when we were talking about hype or real was the one related to prefabrication and modular construction, which, because we all know it's real. It's a real thing, right? But I still think that there's so much progress we can make there. And it all starts with, in order to prefab something, you need a lot of data, you need a lot of information. And, I'm hopeful that modeling gets embraced more so that we can leverage that for modular construction. It all starts there. It's not as simple. It's not as simple, because then you need to train staff and get them into this BIM mindset. But I think that once we make that switch, like, we're going to exponentially grow when it comes to modular construction.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, with prefab and building things offsite and bringing them to the project, I think we've all heard of folks saying it showed up on site, it didn't fit. What the heck is this? And I think tools like BIM and a lot of other technologies that have been developed make modular construction and prefabrication a whole lot more viable for companies because the tools are in place to manage it in a way where you know it is going to fit, but you have to build the processes and make the teams understand how this is going to work. Otherwise, you are going to get pushback or something might not function in the way that you would like it to. And so I think this is one of those levers we can control and manage cost in a way because modular construction or prefabricated construction have a whole lot more certainty than traditional stick built and a lot of other things that we do where we're working in the field, we're introducing risk and managing everything in the moment. And so, Ariel, I like that. I'm glad we're not fully in hype land. I think it's hype with caveats as far as the prefab and such. And I think BIM is a very good tool to kind of get that direction as well. Brett, any thoughts from your seat?
Yeah, I mean, I hear the challenges that Ariel was saying, and there's no question about it. They're big problems that occur from the prefab side to the construction side. You know, at TPPI, we do a lot of healthcare, so we'll see oftentimes prefab, hospital bedrooms that will come through, and we have to work out the logistics through that, and we rely a lot on the BIM model to make sure that things can fit together the way that they're intended and designed to do so. We've run into challenges in the past where sometimes reality doesn't match up with the BIM model. So, we have to be able to make those altercations right there on the job site. But I think that's improving. I think that we're starting to see a little bit more coordination between construction and prefab and, using the various different BIM tools out there to make sure that they're done in a most efficient way.
I like that. I think we're all on the same page here. It's just there's a lot of nuance in managing all of these processes, and long story short, I think obviously BIM is not going anywhere. And the amount of data that actually lives within the BIM model itself, I think, is very rich. And folks are getting more and more impactful in how they are taking advantage of that and not just the design phase, but extending out on site and all kinds of other really exciting things that we weren't seeing, 3, 4, 5 years ago. All right, I've got a question that was directed to me, and it says, Eric, you mentioned that AI can handle pre-con and estimating deadlines, although I'm not sure I would say handle the deadlines, but hopefully help manage in a way that hurts less. But the question is, could AI replace those job positions entirely? I don't think so, to be honest, because I feel like the scrutiny that needs to go on the numbers that are pulled together, both on the estimation and the bidding side, but also the narratives that go into construction proposals. It's not just a question and answer like you see in a lot of other industries. Like I've been part of many very large proposal efforts that are, designed in InDesign and very visually compelling. And they tell a story. It's not just numbers. It's here are our betterments. Here's how our technical approach is going to build this in the timeline you want. And oh, by the way, here's some things that you didn't think about that could shorten the schedule if you choose to do this. And then, of course, if you're not in the federal world, but you're in the commercial world, there's always but wait, there's more. And you get to upsell something that might not have been requested in the proposal or the RFP that you received, but might give something that fits and suits the owner a package that they didn't know would either be possible or gets them excited and meets their needs even more than it might have originally. And so I don't think that these tools, as they evolve, are going to eliminate anybody's roles in pre-construction or on the proposal management side. But I do think it's going to make it easier for folks to spend time on the things that matter, which is making sure everything is accurate and correct. But we're also considering the most innovative and interesting approaches to building these facilities and how we offer the options and tell that story to the owner in a way that hopefully gets you shortlisted for your interview or, maybe sole source projects in the future because they go, gosh, their proposals are so innovative. I don't even need to send an RFP out anymore. But that's my perspective anyway. Brad, Ariel, feel free to disagree. I love your take on that too. I'm passionate about this, even though I don't do it anymore.
There is a real fear. I mean, a lot of times you'll see it manifest itself in jokes that are being told out there where AI is going to replace my job one day. I don't think that that's going to be I don't think that the people will allow it to happen. Let's say that first of all. Second, I think, leveraging AI, leveraging robotics to augment technology again, this is a future problem we're trying to solve today, but I think that we're going to see it kind of work alongside people and not replace jobs. I don't foresee, especially in pre-construction, that happening because it's so human interface. Right, it requires us interfacing with an owner, and an owner doesn't want to talk to AI.
I'd agree with you entirely. I mean, pre-con folks and proposal managers, in some degree, they're almost a wizard in the knowledge that they have and their ability to understand what's being bid and what's being put together and what the owner expects. And I think a lot of the time AI kind of spits back out what you put into it in some degree without the nuance that a person with a lot of experience or an existing relationship with the owner to understand what they need, even if it wasn't necessarily put into the RFP, but you still know that because you worked with them before or somebody else has worked with them before. And construction is such a relationships-based industry that I just don't envision those jobs going away. I think they're going to iterate and change. And I think there's a boatload of opportunity in the realm of pre-construction, whether you want to be in front of the owner and proposing and presenting, or if you're really, behind the scenes and managing and navigating the different processes. So there's a ton to be there. I don't think these jobs are going anywhere. I think they're going to get less stressful, and I think we're going to be able to offer owners more complete packages and things that we're a lot more certain on. Ariel, I know we are running on time right now, so I'll let you respond to that one if you have any thoughts, and then I'll get into my final spiel.
Yeah, I just want to say, think about technology as a way to enhance your job. I don't think it's gonna just go away. So you just continue education. Make sure you get good at prompting. Make sure you get good at using these tools.
That's a skill, though.
And you'll see that again.
Prompting is huge. Like I think a lot of folks don't realize the way you ask these questions of AI greatly influences the quality of the answer you get. And so don't take that lightly. Sorry to cut you off, Ariel, but I think that's an important nuance that folks should remember.
Just think about, you can still be Gru from Despicable Me, and you just have like 100 minions working with you when you use AI. That's the way I think about it.
I like it. All right. Well, I know we are at the top of the hour, even running over a couple of minutes. So I know we have a lot of folks still hanging out here. And I just have to say, thank you again for joining us for another live episode of Digital Builder, where we dig into construction trends. Brad, Ariel, of course, I am ever grateful for your perspective and expertise. Everybody would be exhausted by the end of this hour if it was just me talking into the ether. And so I'm very thankful that that is not the case. If you want to follow me, you can find me on LinkedIn. Should be pretty easy. I've commented all over this page, but I am the only Eric Thomas that happens to work at Autodesk. I'm also on Twitter or X at builder_digital. We're a video first podcast, so head over to YouTube if you'd like to watch brand new episodes. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you might listen to your favorite podcasts. If you got any final questions, if you just want to say hi, always happy to hear from you. So please reach out. Until the next time, goodbye and thank you.